ride with me.
Good morning, Mariana. It's great to have you out here. We have a special broadcast going on today. This is the one we talked to you about on Good Morning Mariana this morning, and this is because it's the kind of tying a bow at the end of a story that we've been covering for the last week and a half or so, and just get you caught up to speed. This is after we saw a post from a member of the community online. It said something about a swimming experience that they had at Tank Beach. Vehicles were impounded and all of that. And that started a big conversation with you guys out there in the community all over the place saying, hey, what's the deal? People swim there all the time. When did this happen? All this, a big uproar, right? But like we talk about all the time, as one of my federal security directors told me, Brad, there's two sides to every pancake. And so we only got to one side of the pancake. And what was happening is that the folks over at the Division of Fish and Wildlife had to make sure they got everything squared away on their side before they can come out and let us know what was happening. So that's what we've got today. It's great. We've got special guests in studio with us today, and give a big warm welcome. We've got Ignacio Yifteg he's a conservation officer for Division of Fish and Wildlife, and we also have the acting director, Rosemary Camacho. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Well, it's great to have you. It was a pretty big deal. I imagine you guys got a couple of phone calls, maybe a couple of messages. Basically, love to hear what happened. I mean, like that thing I said, two sides to every pancake, right? So we only heard the one side, and now we get to hear what happened from the enforcement side.
So the Division of Fish and Wildlife, under the leadership of Secretary Iggy Somar, has been working on a policy pivot towards education and outreach over citations for quite some time. in this current economic climate where budgets are tight across the board, we are admitting that, we're behind on catching up to getting all of our regulations published, promulgated and published, and policies updated to reflect, current changes, as well as updating our management plan. This unfortunate event is very, very regrettable, and we're here to accept responsibility for our missteps and ask forgiveness from the families and the individuals that were impacted by this, and also to pledge that it's our commitment to continue to try to engage with the community, to partner with them to conserve our unique resources. All of us enjoy living in paradise, and we want to make sure that it stays here for tomorrow, for our kids and our kids' kids. And I'm going to ask Ignacio to please share the sequence of events, and then maybe we can circle back and talk to unpack it a little bit.
Definitely. So on April 27th, there was a call that there was some prohibited activity that was happening at Tag Beach. Our responding officer arrived on scene, and our responding officer was basing the Public Law 2044. Mm-hmm. So, during the process there, she did identify that there was some activities that was happening, but she was basing all those on Public Law 2044. And like the director said, regrettably, it went through that phase. It went up, and to the point where, we didn't do the outreach. We didn't come up to a consensual agreement says this is why we're looking at it this way. That's how you're looking at it that way. It went straight. We responded, and they were basing all the citation based on 2044. Now, granted, you got that officer, when she arrived on scene, she only had about 30 to an hour to respond. So based on that, we have a procedure where the very next day, we sat with leadership and we take a look at the assessment. We assessed the citation. We assessed what happened. Mm-hmm.
It is typical, a process for us to, convene and have an after-action assessment. And it was during the course of this that we identified that there was some missteps, that we had some fundamental procedural errors. One being that we didn't have a citation when we confiscated. So even if illegal activity was occurring, we didn't have the proper equipment and tools so that we could execute it with the clean, execution. Another issue is that it seems to be, and of course it's apparent now looking at it, with 2020 hindsight, that there was some illegal activity, but all the people that were present were not equally participating in prohibited activity. But what was confusing to the head officer is that although our management plan does identify swimming as compatible use, that was done in 2007, also acknowledging that it's important that we update it every 5 years to take into account changes, whether it's in our ecosystem or with policy or, things change. And that hasn't happened. And then many years later, in 2018, 2044 passes, which explicitly prohibits swimming absent a permit. Now, currently, we still agree that swimming is compatible use, but we also acknowledge that the division has not been proactive sufficiently to make sure that the community knows this is where we're at. It shouldn't cost us any money to go swimming and have a picnic on the beach. That's not the intent of these laws, to conserve. And so looking at the situation, we recognize that this is our error. Not that there was no prohibited activity, it's just how it was executed was our error. But I also want to state that the officers have a really, really hard job. They are understaffed. And it's not unique to us. Nobody has operating budget, to go and buy equipment and tools. And they oftentimes have to work, longer hours than they had scheduled. Sometimes they can't take vacation time off island because we don't really have sufficient staffing. We don't have sufficient operational tools like for printing. The signs at the location are so faded that even though you have some script nobody's going to go up there to read, what does that say? We looked at what would be clearer messages. Should we just illustrate, like the skull and bones, everybody knows, that's hazardous. You don't go there. So we were trying to think, how could we convey this message so that we don't have repeat occurrences of this nature in the future? So we are still working on that. We are looking at leveraging resources outside of our agency, such as the Sea Grant to help us with drafting the management plans, because enforcement is the only locally funded program in the Division of Fish and Wildlife.
Wow, yeah. So I get a lot of, and one of the things is, when we discussed it briefly over the phone, and we were going through it, and we saw the same thing about the Public Law 20-44, and we saw the same thing about the previous one, and then we saw the thing that was released in 2025 and all that, and it's open to, I don't know if it's open to interpretation. I just know that I interpreted it one way, and that it made it look like you are able to do it, that counts as a compatible use. So I'm with you 100% on what you guys do, because you guys do great stuff to make sure that people don't abuse the resources that we have or overuse them and all that. So I think the same baseline is that, like, everyone knows that you guys are out there doing your job to do the right thing for everybody and making sure that people abide by those laws. And I bet it's got to be the worst when you deal with people who are like, hey, hey, come on, that's me. Like, hey, that's my culture. I can fish anywhere. It's got to be tough.
We did, touching up with the director, was say, after the event, we usually have a procedure set up where we meet with the families or whoever's involved. And we had a meeting with the family. We did identify a lot of stuff that she was saying, so that's where we get to sit down with families or whoever is involved in that, and we say, hey, this is why we did it. This is what we saw. Because for our job is we do, like what she was saying, outreach and education first. Before we do education before citation. We aim towards more of protecting versus punitive damage or punitive fines and fees. So when we went up there, we say, this is the reason why we did that, and then that's where they said, well, the way I'm reading it is, this is how I saw it. And you just said earlier, there's a lot of different public laws regarding that sanctuary.
And I think that's paramount, the reason why there was this interpretation, on the officer's part when she said, well, this is what the public law states. But we also acknowledge that we are not prepared to impound cars. We don't have a secure lot. And so we would never do that. And we certainly have, this incident has really elevated this ambiguity in our office. So we know that we are all on the same page at this point going forward. It will never occur. And that until such time that we have all of our policies updated and our regulations promulgated, every initial encounter is automatically interpreted as education and outreach opportunity.
I love it. Education before
citation.
I love that. That's such a great, it's a great thing. And I imagine some people probably would try to exploit that a little bit too. But I mean, you guys are doing the right thing by, it's a teaching moment.
Well, we're also, in the education and outreach component, we're also saying, could I please get your name and your information? Because we're going to start collecting data if we can identify, well, this is like, a repeat offender. I see him here every single weekend. I say, okay, this is where the regulations say that penalties can be assessed. It's not to punish; it's to correct undesirable behavior.
So let's get it so everybody understands what they're able to do. Let's do that part first. So when it comes to Tank Beach, what can you do? What can't you do?
So based with the management plan, you can scuba, you can snorkel, you can swim. You can't walk on the reef. Okay, because there's a high probability you might damage it. You can't take anything out. You can take out corals, you can take out plants, you can fish, you cannot fish there. So you can enjoy what's there just by going. You can have a picnic. You can go there, enjoy with your family. You can, enjoy the resource that we have. Just don't take anything out of the water.
Pretty easy, right?
Simple.
Okay, so that's great. That's what the main thing was. I think the most feedback that we got from everybody is like, well, then what are we supposed to do? That's crazy. How can we not? So, but you said it right there. So you could swim, you can scuba, you could snorkel, you could do all that stuff. Can't go walk on the beach. It's a no take. You can't take anything. You can't walk on it to damage the coral. Can't take the sand. Can't take the shells. You can't.
Correct. And that's not to say that this will always be an eligible activity in the future based on surveys. If they demonstrate that, we need to restrict 100% of human activity in the water, then it will be our responsibility to make sure we go out there and notify the public well in advance that this is a restricted site and here's why.
Right. And so, I was working with the military, and whenever we had big events, they ended up having to do like the EIS, right? The environmental impact statement and everything. When Fish and Wildlife would pass some kind of, or institute some kind of a restriction, is there something that gets published along with that too? Like due to like these, here's the study.
I imagine that we would explain in our publication, in our notice, that this is the reason why, and if it's a survey document, we would reference if they wanted to come in. It's hard to say now what the reason is.
Right? Yeah.
So I would imagine that we would absolutely explain why, because our goal is to engage the community to help us in our conservation efforts. We may be the agency that's tasked with management and stewardship of our resources, but everybody is a stakeholder.
Wow. So now we know what's going on there, which is great. That's the main thing. The way we understood it was that initially, like you said, there were no citations and the stuff was impounded, and that you ended up not finding them anything, but they were going to be responsible for paying for the towing fee. But they had messaged that they ended up getting support from you guys to go down there and not have to pay for that fee.
Well, we recognize that we can't assign a fine if we improperly confiscated items, number one. And number two, we can't expect them to pay for an impound fee when we improperly impounded a vehicle. So we are here to accept full responsibility, for the actions taken by DFW, and to again apologize to the families and the individuals, I'm certain it was a very frustrating and really hard time. So we are really, really sorry about that. And we know that we are committed to never doing this again. It's not to say we won't have to find people or cite people in the future, but we will make sure that we follow protocol. We do education and outreach first and foremost to explain why. And if it's an issue that is so egregious that it merits fines or confiscating, then we will also offer the opportunity for them to have an administrative hearing so that they can have their case adjudicated.
Well, it looks like you guys started that process right away anyway. You offered them that thing like the next day and all that. So that's really great. How about in the message that came out, they messaged that there were tourists who were part of this too. Is that accurate? They said that the tourists had their vehicles impounded as part of that day.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, there was tourists. There's a couple. So a lot of when the responding officer reported, what they saw or what the responding officer responded to was there were 3 different families or 3 different parties that were involved. So we treat every party the same.
Well, I'm sorry, please go ahead. I was just going to share part of our outreach endeavors will include working with the tour companies to say if a permit is required from them for non-residents to use our resources and there's some kind of a permit that needs to be issued, we will do that prospectively, such as we do with the transient dock. If you want to go to Manigaha and transport your customers, you buy a wristband in advance, but it will be something that we absolutely have to tackle in advance of them getting here.
But right now, do people need a permit to go and do any of these things?
The law states yes.
Okay, let's walk through that, because I think that's interesting, because people should know this, right? I mean, this is your education opportunity. Okay, so this is under 2044?
Correct.
All right, so, and I'm guessing, I see you got a great binder there, so we could walk people through it and let them know what they're supposed to do if they're going to go over there.
Well, being that we still feel that swimming is a compatible use, residents shouldn't be burdened with having to drive to our office to get a permit. We will work and hope to complete it shortly, where we can provide permits digitally, right? In this day and age, they shouldn't have to drive to our office to secure one, because it wouldn't be a paid permit, not for swimming. You're not fishing where that depletes resources. You're just enjoying what's there. So we would like to work towards, facilitating that in an expeditious and painless manner.
Well, it sounds like you're trying to err on the side of just being protective of the beach and the resources, and that sounds like you're coming from the right place. The first blush I got about getting a permit to swim sounds awful, really. So it says by giving Fish and, so it says here's one of those things, by giving the Division of Fish and Wildlife the flexibility to determine when to permit certain maritime sports activities. Division must also do its due diligence to monitor and maintain the conservation areas and sanctuaries, which is what you say you're doing all the time. But that's more about permitting it to happen, not issuing a permit. So we're.
Right. Well, we don't have our regulations completed yet, so that's another avenue that we can explore. Do we just list it in the language? If they are a CNMI resident, and that's easy to demonstrate, with your license, and then that would be waived, similar to going to Menyogaha. We may charge tourists for transport to Menyogaha, but residents are typically exempt.
Right. So. I think it's a complex thing, because as we noted, like it's not complete, and here the same thing where we're still working on it, but like this little part right here, it's really referring. Sorry, here we go. This is the part that says about 20-44 refers to as provided by regulations, but the regulations aren't complete.
Yes.
And then which regulations are we talking about? Are we talking about, are we going back to the management plan from 2007 that you were talking about a little bit earlier, right? So going back and forth to all these, that also adds to making it a little more complicated, a little more confusing. And maybe that also had something to do with what happened on that day, because in here is where, it's outlined where it says that you can do all those things, right? So that would lead me to believe that, except as provided by regulations, that according to this article or this usage plan, hold on, here we go, the management plan in 2007, that based on this, that it is part of what it's referenced in 20-44, which is as provided by regulations. Now, I am not the expert on any of this, and I'm not at all going to try to stand on any soapbox with this stuff and say that this is it. As a guy who wasn't there, and this is not my world of expertise, taking a look at it and doing probably more looking into it than just your random person who's just going to the beach, the way it looks to me, it looks pretty complicatedly simple, right?
That's perfectly put.
Yeah, and that's with all those things, and then you add into the other one, the most recent one, the CNMI Shoreline Public Access, which when you go down to where it says Tank Beach, I'm scrolling super fast just to get down to it, but Tank Beach I think is like number 31 out of all these. 31. And see, in there they talk about swimming, but it doesn't have the little logo for snorkeling. But if you go back to 2007, it says snorkeling. So it's not all together. It's not consistent yet, and there's not one unified thing.
I agree that we are not cohesive sufficiently, but this also elevates the need for us to work collaboratively with our other sister agencies that do have jurisdiction over some of, the same resources. There may not be an overlap, but it does get confusing. And so as we look to complete our regulations, that's something that we're going to have to take into account to make sure that we remove any degree of ambiguity and confusion so that we don't restrict residents from the access, and that we also protect our resources.
So, can we at least definitively say right now, if somebody wants to go and swim at Tank Beach, does it require a permit or anything?
No, not now.
Right. And,
because we don't have any system in place right now.
Right. And if they want to go and snorkel while they're there, is there anything that keeps them from doing that?
As long as they're not standing on the corals, they should be able to do that.
All right. And now this is for me because, again, we talked about me not being an expert in this stuff. Like I've seen in this 2005 plan, it mentions that what snorkeling is and what swimming is, and that they're not the same thing. So and you guys might not be the right people to answer it. Maybe you are. What would the difference be between swimming and snorkeling? The snorkeling to me, I think of as like a swimming activity. Like I'm just out there looking with a snorkel and a mask and fins, just checking stuff out, floating and looking at all the fish, but I can breathe a lot easier.
Yeah. And we like the same, like for us, it's depending on whoever's like the responding officer, whoever's reading it. Because for me, I'm saying snorkeling and swimming, it's a water activity. You're just seeing better underwater with a snorkel or without a snorkel, or breathe better.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just there taking in and just enjoying what the resource that we have out there.
And I'm not trying to make it easier for bad fisher people who are trying to take away from our take areas, but more of getting a better understanding about like what's the rule and what's some of the reasoning behind it. Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's pretty much that.
I'm going to also guess that perhaps the reason they differentiated snorkeling from swimming is that sometimes people use snorkeling gear when they're fishing. Mm-hmm. So I'm not certain. I wasn't involved when they were crafting all of that. But I know that from our perspective, we're looking at as long as it's not, degrading our resource, it's not limiting, then it should be permissible.
One of the things that the family said, they use this term that having snorkel gear signifies intent to fish.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe so. If you have fish with you and your snorkel gear, I think that may be a little harder to.
Yeah.
But just having snorkel gear in and of itself, for me personally, but I'm also not an officer. I'm not out there. So they also have to assess all of the information that's there at the scene.
Yeah. So it was a rough day for everybody. It's been a rough walk back for all this stuff too. And so you're going through, it's probably a great education moment for all the officers involved also. That was that turn off because we weren't using it. So a lot's happened. So any changes inside the organization? Did you guys do anything differently now?
So a lot that we're doing within our section is we start, we've had the training, but now we're starting adding more was our interaction with how we treat our stakeholders, our community members, how we approach them, how we talk to them, and hitting more on that education before citation.
I think also a new approach, because this is something that has been in place, but one thing we're doing now, which is that I've also witnessed and participated in, is having everybody tell us their understanding of what they're responsible to enforce, because we're trying to find the root on how did we diverge so drastically? Because this is a charge that Secretary Iguisomar gave us when he took office. These people are struggling to feed their families. Even the ones who you say, but they were fishing where they shouldn't have been. He said, we have to understand people are trying to feed their families. We can't come at them with, a position of, punishment. That's not what our jobs are. Our jobs are stewardship, to make sure that our future generations can enjoy what we enjoy. Because he also feels strongly that, and it bothers him that his kids don't have the same childhood that he had. And that was because, we didn't have the same understanding of conservation. Mm-hmm. So now we're asking everybody to go around the table and say, well, what do you think this means? Because just for me saying, this is our charge, we do education before citation, that may not mean the same thing to everybody at the table. So that's also helping us get a better understanding of how did we look at the same document and read it two different ways.
So if you're down there with your snorkel gear and you've got a pachinko, you're done. You can't do it. You can't do it.
Leave that in the car.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we got a really good feel for how this stuff works now, especially in this one. And, I know that things can change, and when they do, hopefully you guys can come in and let us know about this and talk it through, like as it happens. Like, hey, starting next week, we're going to be doing this, or starting next month, or we're getting together with all those agencies. We're going to talk about it, whatever that is. Love to have you on and help spread the word about all that stuff, so people have a real good feeling of what they can do and what they can't, and have it open where they can ask you some questions.
We'd like to take you up on that opportunity for free advertising.
Yeah.
And before we go, I'd like to really share about our exciting inaugural Fishers Proclamation Week coming up. And I'm going to ask Ignacio to share.
Yeah, so the first ever Fishers Proclamation. So it's going to be a whole week. The proclamation, we're looking at getting it, the ceremony at May 30th. June 1st will be the family event day. I think it's gonna start from 9 in the morning until 2 o'clock. We're still in the planning phase. And during that time, the Conservation Enforcement Office will have a booth, so that way we can also, partake in that during our outreach and education. So that's gonna be an area too where we'll be there, so people can come up to us and say, hey, this is how I'm saying it, how are you saying it? Or, we can go back and just have that balance between enforcement and community outreach.
And hearing their feedback also helps shape the regulations, so it fits, management needs, but also the community's concerns. They have an input.
Great.
Yeah, so 30th is the sign, and then the June 1st is the family day for the first ever Fishers Proclamation.
All right. Well, now that we're in the loop, so we can be there. It's loud, right?
It is loud, yeah.
That's when our neighbors go and open that door. I don't know what happens. This middle wall just woof, woof, and it sounds like they're scrapping, but they're actually really good. They're great neighbors. All right. So I think we got that pretty well wrapped up. I mean, people know what's going on, and this is great. This is exactly what people were hoping to hear, a little bit more about it and find out what happened and know what the real regulations are for them. Mm-hmm. And so I think we do.
We will come back when we're next to done, or when it's being promulgated, to allow people the opportunity to weigh in, and so they'll know when it's time to put comments in.
All right, and so I guess we'll see you next time that there's a land cow floating in the lagoon. It's the absolute best. Hey, I want to say thank you very much,
thank you,
Acting Director and Ignacio. Thank you so much for being in here with us and spending some time, and good luck out there.
Yeah. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to reach out and inform everybody what's going on.
All right. Anybody you want to acknowledge or shout out or anything before you go?
I want to thank our enforcement officers for the hard work that they do. I know that theirs is a tough job. It's thankless at times, and they don't get a lot of recognition, but they really are committed, dedicated, and I'm thankful for each and every one of them.
Great. Anyone you want to shout out?
Not yet.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming in. Thank you guys for watching. It was an issue that was coming up here for a while. So I want to say also thanks because the folks who brought it up, the Macaronas family, even when they posted it, it was still they weren't not happy, but they were still respectful about their posts too, and they were just providing that information, and that's how it all starts. And so having the mutual respect is what makes everything work out really nice, and it looks like we got that here. All right, folks, that's all we have today. We tuned in just for this, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning for Good Morning Marianas right here at 7 o'clock. All right, take care. Have a good night. Well, good day. It's not nighttime yet. It's still the morning. What are we doing? All right, take care.
Good morning, Marianas. So many things we gotta discuss. Happy Tirawamian greetings to Rhoda, Guam, Saipan, and Tinian. For all your island news from a beautiful place with Pacific views. It's always so much fun on Good Morning Mariana.